So the time is now 8:31, and we will move into closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551074, discussion regarding board member and superintendent roles, responsibilities, and duties, and then pursuant to Texas Government Code 551071, 551072, discussion with board's attorney regarding purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. And with that, we'll go into closed session.
So we are moving in now to our budget workshop. So I want to thank the board for allowing us to schedule this in partnership with our Team of 8 training to just kind of maximize your time here with us. And so Wes is ready to take us into the last budget workshop. We sent the presentation to you last week to get a preview. There were a few edits that Wes made between then and today, so he'll walk you through those edits. And then this is all in preparation for our budget hearing and approval on June 17th. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Scott.
All right, final budget workshop. Let's dive right in. Just as a reminder to newer board members, you're required to adopt budgets for 3 funds. The general, the debt service, and the child nutrition fund. And we're going to discuss some of the details of those today to get you prepared for actual adoption and the hearing on the budget a week from Monday. Let's talk about the general fund. The critical assumptions related to the general fund. Primary driver of school funding is average daily attendance. And average daily attendance is somewhat determined by enrollment. So right now we're taking 150 additional students, going from 10,910 students up to 11,060. That is from the demographer's report that came out in December. That is a number that is in between the mid and the mid, and that is for snapshot. So that's going to be the last school day in October. That's the one that the TEA keys on and will represent that the enrollment that we have for the year. Just informationally, even though our snapshot enrollment was 10,910, our average enrollment for this school year was around 10,940. The result is we're planning on ADA of 10,369. That's 93.5% of snapshot enrollment. That's not actually how ADA is determined. ADA is determined. They take your enrollment for the day, and the type of students don't actually qualify as a full student. So if you're pre-K or below, that's a half a student. There are some high school students as well that only qualify as half students, and our average enrollment with 10,940, our average membership is what ADA is calculated of was averaged in the 10,800. So our ADA percentage was actually over 98% this year, but that's 95%, excuse me, but that's 95% of membership, not enrollment. All right. The other, once you determine your bucket of what you're going to get by the state funding formula, what pays for most of that is our property taxes, and the assumptions that we're using at this point in time is a 7% increase in property values based on the preliminary results we got from the appraisal district. Results came in at a 9% increase. We've scaled that back to 7%. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. That 2% is to get us to certified values that we'll get in late July, early August, that will determine the levy for the year. And so we think that appeals will take that down to 7%. And everything that we have right now indicates from the TEA that the M&O tax rate will be compressed by 0.23 of 1 cent, and that will take us down from 6,692 tax rate to a 6,669. Okay, available revenue. So board president, do you want the good news, the bad news, or the mistake first? I'm gonna do the mistake first, and then we'll end with good news. And so that you'll have forgotten all about the mistake by the time that we get there. So let's start with the expenditure portion of available revenues, just for a new board member's sake. That what we've generally done budgetarily is talk about the revenues that we think we're going to get in the next year, and then what our base budget is based on what we've already gotten, and then that will leave available revenues for compensation, for initiative packages, for additional staffing. And this has been somewhat of an unusual conversation this year, as we started out with a negative number. In February, we talked about, if you're just a little laser work. Oh, am I pushing the wrong button? No laser, right here we've got a negative $260,000. That's what we started talking about. Unfortunately, I made a mistake there. When we were talking about base budget, I left out. I look at it through what I call the model, and I look at it in a different way than we do normally in the reports that provided to the board, where you're looking at functional expenditures. This is how much we spend in instruction, and this is how much we spend in transportation. I look at it in terms of payroll, of growth cost, of initiative cost, of one-time cost, of non-payroll cost. Oh yeah, thank you. You had the center button. Yeah. Thank you. And I left growth and initiative costs off the that would be 23-24 growth and initiative costs. So I left the expenditures a couple of million short. So the conversation that we should have been having should have started out in the negative about 2.7 million range, and not a $260,000 range. That is the mistake, and you'll see that right here, where we in payroll, where it goes from 77 to 79 million, and you'll see that in the non-payroll, where we went to 15.6 to 16 million. And just for this presentation today, just to give you a little extra assurance, I provided a little reconciliation that will be done going forward from now on, so I don't make the same mistake again. That takes what our current amended budget is as of today, pull out our one-time cost, which is a little bit under 1.7 million for the December retention bonus that was paid out, and the 250,000 that we had in the general fund for safety and security costs projects, the fencing and film project, and added in the instructional coaches that are in ESSER funding in 23-24 coming on in 24-25, and you'll see that those numbers reconcile to each other, so we don't have silly mistakes going forward. My deep apologies for that mistake. Okay, that was the mistake. And then we'll do bad news. Bad news is, as we one of the items brought forward by board members in our last session was we really budget conservatively on interest income. Can we not put still put a conservative estimate forward, but a little bit more than what we're doing right now? Just informationally, I'd budgeted $200,000 in this $1.4 million number here. A portion of that is interest income. That was $200,000. For the informationally, this year we're in the general funds earning about $2 million at this point in time, and this philosophically, we don't want to rely on interest income, right? But can we put a little bit more in there? And so I did. In the June workshop, you'll see I put $300,000 more in local revenues. But as I continue to look at revenues, and I continue to look at our property taxes, and the trend is in 21 we collected 99.8% of our levy. In 22 we collected 99.5% of our levy. In 23 we collected 99% of our levy. And I did not like that trend. One of the things that I noted this year, and I'll talk about it a little bit more a week from Monday when I'm talking about the regular the monthly financial report with results of operations through May of 24 is that, you know, the levy off certified values was 108 million. Adjustments since certification have been $2 million, where it's $106 million. If you compare that to the year before, where we had $124 million levy, and we only had $1 million in adjustments. So even though the levy's lower, the adjustments, due to everybody appealing, and that going way past certification time, just keeps growing. And so I thought it would be, and performance-wise, property taxes have not met budget the last 2 years. So I wanted to be more conservative, and so I did ramp that down to the tune of about $800,000, and you'll see that right here between the 3.6 and the 2.9 million that you see there. Okay, so that's increased a little bit in investment income, but it only made sense to come down on property taxes, so the net was actually lower. So that's the bad news. Now what's happened in between is related to two changes in methodology from the state, and we have talked since August related to a provision of Senate Bill 2 related to additional state aid for certain districts impacted by compression. There was one paragraph in Senate Bill 2 that defined that the TEA didn't know how to interpret. There was rumors that it was written wrong, that it wasn't written for those that it was intended to be written for. People, that write the template that we estimate state aid from didn't know how, when they first put it out, it was put into the template as it was written, which generated the district like $6 million. So we had this mystery $6 million that we talked about for a few months in the fall. But it was eventually just taken out of the template because the TEA didn't know how to implement it, and neither did anybody else. And so TEA finally adopted a methodology, and that generated in 24-25. It doesn't generate anything in 23-24 for the district of a little bit over $1 million, and we talked about that last time. When you see there was a I'm using the wrong one. When we met in May, we talked about the big change. We had big changes in what we were just estimating what was going to happen with values, and then we actually got values, and this was the result, which also changes state aid. But it changed to our benefit because of that additional state aid, and you see the difference down here to the tune of over $1 million, about $1.1 million. And that's remained consistent through the June numbers that's presented today. The second thing is in the previous legislative session, Senate Bill 12 gave a lot of benefits to the over 65 taxpayer that was implemented this last fall, and the state didn't quite know what to do with that either. Their initial reaction was whatever loss you incur through a loss in the frozen levy, you're seeing in your additional state aid, and there was a lot of debate about methodology. The methodology up through June 3rd was a zero net effect to Boerne and every other school district in the state of Texas. They changed their methodology. A new summary of finance came out on June 4th that provided $2.2 million in additional funding in the 23-24 school year. And so I had on Tuesday, I had conversations with Amanda Brownson at TASBO to see if that's something that we could rely on, and if it carries forward into 24-25, because the template hasn't even been updated at this point in time. So there's no way to estimate what that would be in 24-25. We talked about that we could at least rely on $2 million. So what I've done at this point in time is I put an additional $1.8 million in state aid in what you're seeing. Too many things up here. in this number right here, where it went from a negative 900,000 to a positive 900,000. So we're going to get more state aid than we anticipated, and the bottom line is it brings our additional revenues to 3.2 million, but unfortunately, because of the before mentioned mistake, what we're talking about is a starting point of a negative $270,000. All right. Any questions or concerns related to available revenues and base budget expenditures? Okay. This slide is just informational only. It is to provide a preference for the proposed compensation package. Mr. Senna has talked a lot in board meetings about the impact of inflation over the last 6 years, as opposed to the no change that has been made to the basic allotment. And what this has been put up here for is to provide a defined example of an increase in expense for employees of the district. And what you're seeing here is what of our 1,400 employees, 900 of them are take insurance through take TRS Active Care insurance through the district, and so you have what the current premium is right now, what we pay, and what the employee pays. And here, this is just the overall increase. This is not the impact to the employee or the employer. This is just the overall increase in premium that's been communicated by TRS, and this is the cost of that increase, $912,000. So what I want you to pay attention to in this slide that you see highlighted in yellow above is that for most of our employees that are they're employee only, they're getting about a $600 increase in health insurance premiums. The district cannot afford to cover the cost of inflation for employees, but this is just one that is defined that I wanted you to keep in mind, because it does frame our compensation increase. Put this over here. This is just this was presented in the last workshop. This is just to give board members a feel for what we've done for the employees over the last 5 years in terms of our percentage raise across the board increases and the mid-year incentives that we've provided as well. And what that leads us to is our compensation. Man, I'm going to pick up the right one. Yes, sir. Sorry, go ahead. Yes. Thank you. Yeah, in 21-22, a $2 an hour raise was given to all auxiliary employees. I believe that was in January of 22. So it was a pretty substantial increase that was done at that point in time. So, I'm sorry, I'm not giving anybody a chance to comment or question. Did y'all have questions or comments about these last two slides? Okay. Keeping that in mind, here is the compensation package put forward by administration. This was done to address the known $600 increase in cost that we knew was coming from health insurance. This will be done for all employees. This will not impact and it will not cause compression between job classes because it's done across the board. 1.5% for teachers, librarians, and nurses, keeping in mind that even though this column says average increase per FTE right here, this $891 increase would be the increase for all teachers, librarians, and nurses. The other three columns are averages. You're going to have since it's done as midpoint of the various classes within the classes, you're going to get a range under that class and over that increase. For professionals, a 1% increase. For those that make more than $100,000, about 27 employees, there will be a 0.5% increase. And then for paraprofessionals and auxiliary employees, a 2.5% increase. So we're given the highest percentage increase to the employees that need that the most. Yes, sir. Paraprofessionals is going to be any employee not defined as auxiliary are going to be your employees that auxiliary are going to be employees that clock in and clock out, and they get paid for the time that they clock in and clock out. A paraprofessional employee is more of on a set time, but they're still gauged on an hourly basis to the extent that they earn more than their 40 hours that they're set to work. They're going to get comp time for that. They have to be recognized for the time that they work. Is there somebody that has a better explanation of a
So
paraprofessional?
paraprofessionals would be like instructional assistants in the classroom,
Mm-hmm.
administrative assistant type staff, clerical staff, teacher assistants. And the auxiliary would be more along the lines of child nutrition, operations, transportation.
Do substitutes fall into paraprofessionals?
No, they're substitutes for auxiliary employees.
Auxiliary, okay.
And then what about like your speech therapist, that professional?
Professional.
Why is there a difference between maybe like a teacher and a specialist? What's the differentiating factors that go into it?
They're legally defined by the Department of Labor. Yes, ma'am.
Why would we give more?
Why would we give a teacher a higher raise than a special? Mm-hmm.
How do we decide how?
I'm trying to think of exactly what a specialist is and where they fit in the job classes.
Well, let's just think a classroom teacher. They carry a class load of students that they're responsible for, and so we're always looking at how much can we do for our teacher. There's different pay bands and pay scales. So teachers, nurses, and librarians are together in the pay scale, whereas professionals are paid on see the APO 7. There's different categories, and so as soon as you leave the classroom into some of those other roles, that's where you see a difference in job category.
Can you help me out with, if you can, Dr. Kraft, on these four here, which one would be kind of the hardest position?
Well, right now in education, all positions are hard to fill, but we cannot lose sight of our classroom teachers. Our classroom teachers who are on the front lines with our kids every single day.
Yes. Yeah, your principals fall under professionals.
Principals, assistant principals, counselors, speech paths, diagnosticians, everyone else who's a certified, degreed professional that's not a classroom teacher.
Wes, are you going to show?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. I do not have that up here. Apologies for that, but I don't have that against the scale. Just a little bit above. It would be that plus the 891, so it would put it just a little bit above 55. Mm-hmm. Yes, they are.
Also,
Okay. I will not dispute it.
Okay, so I'm just dividing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to get that 1.5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. If this is not going to address our employees' needs, and I understand that. At the same time, this is going to be a tough pill for the district to swallow budgetarily. And I'll show you that in just a second when we talk about how it's going to impact fund balance. Are there any other comments or questions on that compensation package itself? Mm-hmm.
I realize they've got some issues with higher rates of poverty than we do, so that requires different resources. But the fact is when you've got an extra $1,000 or $1,500 per kid, and you got 100,000 kids, that's $100 million. You can afford to pay in Northside more than we do. And what we've always noticed over the years, and we're all disappointed. We'd love to do more than this, but I know that the story is not ending here with Wes. But you look at the gap in revenue per student. That's huge, and just over the years, when you look at the number of teachers we lose to Northside compared to what we hire, I would say we probably hire 5 or 6 teachers from Northside for every one that we lose to them. And then you talk to them one-on-one. A lot of it's quality of life. They live here. It's quality of life. It's the environment. So, I don't know that we'll ever catch up to Northside. I don't think we will. But that doesn't seem to be hurting us from a relative recruiting point of view, And we certainly hope that the legislature does what it needs to do regarding public school funding and teacher pay in the next session.
So we've talked about what's available to us and how much it would cost for compensation. Let's put it into a bigger picture and talk about building blocks again. So we're starting off with a negative $271,000. Just to refresh, I'll walk through these again. We've got base budget adjustments of $525,000, which you'll see a week from Monday. I'm going to bring a final budget amendment to the board for 23-24. Most of that is one-time cost to ensure that we don't overexpend functionally. You're making just little bitty adjustments to ensure we don't have findings that we have to write to explain to the TEA why we overspent $10,000 in Function 11 that has a $50 million budget, right? But there is one recurring cost in there, and that is utilities, $600,000. We're going to talk about how much utilities have gone up for the district over the last 5 years momentarily. But that 525 you see there's composed of an increase to the base budget of $600,000, and then an offsetting decrease. One of the items that we've just seen over the years as copier costs are just over budgeted. We had a contingency for overages in case campuses went over on the use of their copiers, and they have not met that. So I'm going to take $75,000 away from that budget. TRS rates are going up. What the district has to contribute to TRS on behalf of our employees is going up a percentage point, if I'm not mistaken. That's going to cost the district about $57,000 based on current payroll. Property insurance with the increase in square footage from the effectively 4 facilities that are going to open in August. We're going to pay more because of that, and then TRS TASB has communicated that rates are going to go up as much as 40%, and so it's a 40% is what's been included in the calculation that yields that $371,000 number. We've allocated $350,000 for VOS startup costs that will be spent in the first year. Those aren't costs that will be recurring, but they need waste baskets, they need flags, they need refrigerators, and all other manner of things to be sure that we're ready to serve the students on the first day of school. And so the $350 has been allocated for that. Because we're adding four facilities, opening 4 facilities as well, we're going to add another $200,000 to utility budget on top of the $600,000 that's just for existing facilities operating today. We've got $2.4 million in staffing. That is the story of this budget, and it's the lack of funding or the lack of adequate funding is certainly a big story, but the costliest item for the district this year is opening Wilson. $2 million of that $2.4 million is attributed to staffing needed to open and operate Wilson. We actually have a small increase for non-payroll allocations to campuses, and we have some teaching and learning items we need to take care of for items like phonics and the expansion of that program that's going to cost $72,000, and then the compensation package that we presented to you at $1.1 million. That is a $5.4 million deficit.
Wes,
Yes, sir.
On the Viola Wilson startup costs, you mentioned refrigerators and things like that.
Yes,
Is any of that we can put under INS? Some of that would seem to be like capital expenditures.
Well, INS is for the payment of debt. So I guess if you're asking whether we could use bond funds for that kind of things, these, I gave the example of refrigerator, and that's something that would last more than a year. The refrigerator item is a fairly small example. Most of that stuff is stuff that's not necessarily lasting a long time, that wasn't included in the contract or the amount that we allocated towards building these schools out of the $165 million of our bond authorization. So it is not; these are things that you normally wouldn't pay for, and in some cases couldn't pay for out of bond funds. Mr. Stahl, would you have a more intelligent explanation of that than I do? Thank you.
Now, what's the assumption?
It's $1,000 per student, and we estimated, for purposes of budget, we estimated 400 students. So that's a $400,000 estimate within the numbers that you're seeing here. We'll provide that in the next board update. But it's the 2.4 is effectively, and Dr. O'Hare, if you could correct me if I get a number wrong, but I believe it's of all the staffing changes at the campuses related to teachers, I believe it was a net 12 teacher ad, mostly related to opening Wilson. That's $1 million right there. Then you have we'd already budgeted for and hired a principal, right? That's already in the budget, but we've got our assistant principal for Wilson, counselor for Wilson, 4 custodians, if I remember right. Man, I'm going blank. I actually have this up, and I can talk through this. There's only in the numbers outside the 2 million for Wilson, there's only 4 FTEs that compose about $250,000. Or so we had to add another 18 plus teacher to serve that student population. We added a bilingual specialist, and there were 2. We haven't added anything to support maintenance since Van Rob. Mark, is that right? Since we opened Van Rob, we haven't added any additional maintenance workers since we opened what campus? Fabra. Okay. So we've opened 3 campuses since then. It's stretching those. There's two maintenance / grounds workers to support, especially since we're opening another campus and stretch those guys even further. But we'd be more happy to send that in a board update. $10,369, which would be we're basing that on 93.5% of our snapshot enrollment of 11,060. Just a little bit under, just being a little bit conservative. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. Okay. Yes, sir. Go ahead. Yes. We budget for vacancies. Yes, sir. Yeah, you don't want to fill vacancies that haven't been budgeted for, right? So that would make it a much tougher proposition. Mm-hmm. Yes, that's traditionally been part of our 1% sweep. A little bit concerning to me right now, in that I'm looking at numbers through May, which they're still coming in. We haven't completed closing May yet, right? But a rough projection from May yields a sweep. Unfortunately, it looks like about $16,000 out of a $100 million budget, which is a lot less than 1%, right? That would be much less than we've done in the past, and we'll see how that comes out. There's so many factors that can happen in June, and so many things that are still being batted around right now that could change those numbers. But a little bit tighter than what I'm used to. But yes, we do budget for vacancies, and that should provide us some wiggle room in terms of yeah, we present a dire picture here, but it's with purpose, right? Okay. Any other questions or? Yes, sir. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. Attendance is one way to address it, right? If we improve attendance, and I'm speaking to employee attendance, then we reduce sub costs. We've got a little bit of back and forth there, and then we have one job class that pays better as a sub than it does as an aide. So that's one thing we're living with, because some employees have figured that out and would just as soon stay subs. Rather than be employed at a lower rate. Attendance is the primary way to address that, because we certainly spend a lot more on teacher subs than we do aide subs. And the more that we have consistent employment, especially in the special ed side, the less we pay for those contracted services, because it costs a lot more to do SLP and LSSP services contracted than it does as an employee. All right. Impact on fund balance. If a compensation is adopted, if compensation is not adopted, we're looking at a $4.3 million deficit. If it is, it's a $5.4 million deficit. Here's a picture that's previously been presented that shows fund balance compared to 3 months of operating expenditures. We don't include recapture in this history, so that you're looking at an apples to apples scenario. if you look at the picture, it looks kind of dire when you get to here. Just keeping in mind that we budgeted a $4.7 million deficit, and that budget number is what's used in 23-24. The reality is, with the news that came from TEA on Tuesday, that yellow and green bar should come in about even. It would be about a $2 million deficit instead of a 4.7 right now. If you use May numbers and include the $2.2 million additional dollars coming from that additional state aid, that reduces the deficit to about $2 million. Yes. Mm-hmm. I would call most of these years pretty much normal operating years. You have ups and downs, and most of these, like I would call 21. This was right when I got here, Dallas, but I believe that was a planned spend down. We had the unusual one is 23, right? Where we were supposed to pay a $9 million in recapture. We ended up paying $7 million in recapture. That's when interest rates really shot up. We budgeted like $70,000 for interest income, and we ended up earning $1 million, $1.5 million. We had these big, we ended up having a $5 million surplus that year, and that resulted in a planned spend down this year. It's not going to be as severe as what it even looks like, right? We're gonna end up. My prediction today is about $25 million in fund balance, which would, like I said, would make those bars even, and would bring just assuming that we spent all of the $5 million that we're talking about spending right now on a deficit basis, that would bring fund balance down to about $20 million. Mm-hmm. No, we're in unusual circumstances. These years were pretty much normal. This is where it's getting a little wonky, right? And we can survive on $20 million fund balance, right? We can make payroll through October, which is what fund balance effectively does. But we can't sustain that forever. We're going to have start having some really serious conversations about how we spend money. Mm-hmm. That's fair to say. Yes, sir.
Correct, not this year.
We're not doing what we'd like to do, right? Which goes to the narrative. People talk to employees, say, look, people think they're worth way more than this. But out of all of our legislative priorities, we were 4 for 5. The problem was the one that we didn't get, the important one, was this right here. And, shielded our, for the most part, we shielded our employees from the state of Texas not doing their job, public school funding. We're running out of school. One thing I would add, should, that you look at increasing our general fund budget over the past 6 years since House Bill 3 was passed. Our general fund budget's gone up around 21%. But you add enrollment growth and inflation, 37. The state of Texas says we budget for the state on population growth and inflation. That's what the state allows itself. But this district is 50%, 60% below that.
They don't pay what they do.
They don't care. So they haven't done their job for us. And every school district in the state's in the same boat. Which is why Northside's got why we're crazy.
So as far as what, I mean, and I'm the rookie, so, but sitting in your meeting, we're talking all the pennies, golden pennies, copper penny thing. The only lever we can really pull on revenue side of things was what, like 1 penny? I forget it was.
There's 2 ways to address this, right? And one is to increase revenues, and one is to decrease expenditures. And on the revenue side, the solution that shall not be named would be 3 available golden pennies, and that would generate a little more than $3 million in revenue currently. It would make a significant impact in today's conversation. Can't happen today, so it's fantasy. Yeah.
So Mr. Scott and I have spent a lot of time talking about budget, and at one point we were at a place where we didn't feel comfortable giving a raise. But I think what we have proposed today is in a good place. We will always want to do more, but we have to see the long game. And so our budget story to our employees has to start the day after we approve a budget. And the plan would be for a joint letter from the board president and I to send to our employees about the budget that was adopted, compensation, but also laying out the facts, because our district has not felt the cuts that everybody else across the state has been feeling. We are not at that place. But if the legislation doesn't act, we will be there at a place where beginning in, once school gets started, we come back from Labor Day, we will have to start having serious discussions about where will we find reductions in our budget. And it starts with travel. It starts with all the things that don't impact the classroom, but there's many things that we have to take a look at. But would we want to give more? Yes, always. But as the leader of the system, I believe in budgeting conservatively, and we can't go too far down the path of a raise where it's going to hurt us in the long run and impact our ability to maintain a strong fund balance.
So what I think I'm hearing there is the changing on the teacher raise, that basically holding over long term, as opposed to medical putting, I'm looking at 982, and I think y'all are at just a little higher than that, I think 99, almost, under $1 million. The medical side, I think that one, I think you're saying is a little more fluid than the actual base pay rate.
It doesn't, we don't impact all our employees when we address it directly through benefits. The discussion on all the different ways that we could try to do something for employees was the way that we put this forward. We felt it was the best way to impact all employees and at least address it to the extent that they're being affected through medical insurance. That's the only reason that was put up there at all. Was to,
We've never done that. What we have done, but I do want to point this out. I mean, I'm in business, so I've always pushed the trustees on the board a while to tell you over the years. I didn't. Why? Let's have it set off. Our budget last 6, 7, 10, all our budget. And go back. Our
so fun. I don't have the comparison to show today to show you, Mr. Pipes, but I would put what we contribute towards health insurance up against any districts.
I think we're above that. We're dead far above that.
Yeah, that was.
Yes.
Get off insurance.
Yes, and Christy had a great idea of compensation statements. So I'm working with Wes and our new chief of HR. We'll be putting together compensation statements that will go to our employees at some point this fall with last year comparison to this year, so they can see the true picture of the investment the district is making in their salary.
I think this is it's a good place to interject here too, that when we're going into the fall talking about cuts and things like that, what we spend on training and expense reimbursements and things like that with the board are very small, in comparison to all this. And we've always done a really good job of it as far as trying to not spend money on behalf of the district and those sorts of things. But we just need to be really mindful, I think, as a board of going over the next 12 to 24 months that anywhere that, we can cut back and show some leadership there, is good. So.
One comment on benefits.
Yes, ma'am.
Are there ways that we can
I know somebody that's provided some pretty good savings comparisons that are out there for choosing different levels, and we need to find a way to make that. I know our benefits personnel and and HR do a good job of making employees aware of their options.
But going back to the slide deck, there's a slide where it shows the number of employees enrolled in each program. There's customized letters that we can do to those employees to reach out and to educate them on their options, so that they understand, how the choices they make can also, put more dollars in their pocket.
And if I'm not mistaken, nobody reads those things.
$1.5 would be about another $60,000.
I think where I struggle with that too is that I see in that group there that do a lot and have a lot of Facebook and those special
it's a majority, which I doubt, whatever the number is, but if you want to look at optics, I mean, we talked first budget workshop, we were dreaming about kind of raises of $3, $4. That's history. And the question last Mark was, how do you feel about 2.5? Well, you do the incentive for retention. Incentive is good. So you can sleep at night because it shows our employees that we're differentiating and we're trying to help those at the lowest end of the pay scale. A lot of districts, not that you want to not give out raises. I don't like the idea of giving out a 0.5% raise to somebody over $100,000. I don't like that at all. But optically, imagine a very tight budget year, what people in the community would, well, you know, people making X are getting the same 1.5%. That's double, triple the amount of money, or quadruple, or tuple that a bus driver gets. I mean, the optics are terrible. Hopefully we'll be in a position a year from now where we do right by everyone.
Well, to Courtney's point, no, I think do those professionals make on average? I mean, it's less than 100,000. The ones that are making 100,000 or more, they're only getting 0.5%.
You've only got you've got 150 of those employees that make less than 100,000. They're going to average between range anywhere from 60 to 90.
And we're talking about another 65,000 to just match them up with the teachers and the T&L.
I just think the way we categorize, just not all of the professionals, but the ones that do have a full classroom, they're educating kids that OT, those I just felt like maybe fall in different categories. No, just remove maybe a few that are considered professionals that have a lot of face time.
So of those,
I may not understand correctly, just being new, so forgive me if I'm not categorized correctly in my
that's
mind.
fair enough. Question: out of those 174,
Where they're basically teachers.
That are teachers, but they make more money.
So what's great about the budget workshop is you all ask great questions and you give us feedback. And so Wes shared that an estimate of moving that second line from 1 to 1.5% is an additional 60,000. So if you're comfortable taking on that additional 60,000 as part of that deficit, we can, work up that model. But again, when you're looking at professionals, and I don't have all the categories in front of me, but principals, assistant principals, counselors, think of, dyslexia teachers, just think of all the teachers and all the specialists and all that group that work on campus, support kids, special education, dyslexia, coordinators, that makes up that professional group. And so it would be, I would not want to go through that list and sort because it's only 174 people. And if the feedback from the board is to go from 1 to 1.5, then we can work that model up and put it in our next presentation to the board, which would be the night where you're approving the budget.
5.46.
Well, to me, that gives us 3 different raise classifications instead of 4, and it's a little cleaner. But yeah, 3 instead of 4, because right now we've got a half, we got 1, 1.5, and 2.5, and those are some of our most talented people in that group. Yeah, everybody is, yeah. But those are some really, really great people.
But to Rich's point, giving that is pretty considerable compared to what we were talking about exactly the bus driver, those people.
Yeah, so 1% is 750, then 1.5% is roughly?
At least they're not so, just the optics, like Rick said, that they're getting short end of the stick.
I understand they're making more, I think it is more of
I don't
a,
think there's gonna be a good story to tell, but it's just gonna be what the negative story is gonna be. Negative story of someone getting less than someone, the one.
Well, so
Uh, the, uh, the original proposal was zero, for those APO 7 and above, and that was revised to 0.5. That contributed $15,000 to the total for those 27 employees, and provides them. That's about $500 for somebody making $100,000, right? So that hits on that same note that it's covering all over most of the health insurance increase. Good thought.
But I still think it's part of the optics and the message that folks earning over 100,000 would get 0.5%. I don't see us putting that at 0.75. Just my recommendation. Wes has a few more slides if we can get through that and give y'all some more think time. I know you're dying to hear about debt service and child nutrition.
Yeah. Is there somebody else talking? Just to give you a little context on how we got here, this has been provided to Finance Committee. I'm not sure if this has been presented to the whole board before, but there's 5 cost categories that have really exceeded inflationary costs that we want you to be aware of, and the impact that it's had on the budget over the last 5 years. Starting with the bottom line here, the blue one, which is a fuel, has contributed more than $200,000 increase impact budgetarily. Costs in fuel have gone way up. We're actually driving less miles than we drove 5 years ago. But due to efficient routing, but we're paying a lot more for it. We've got insurance on the next line above that, where it's more than doubled, 124% increase over the last 5 years, and that doesn't even include the 40% increase, because that number is going to go up over $1 million with the $370,000 predicted increase this year. For 24-25, excuse me, not this year. The next line would be safety and security. You can see the the point in time after Uvalde happened where it's really taken off and it has taken more than $1.2 million more budgetarily than it did 5 years ago. Utilities, keeping in mind that this number here is a budgeted number, and we're going to add $600,000 more to that. That's a dramatic increase that's taken more than $1 million by itself. And even though our enrollment has certainly gone up over the last 6 years, it hasn't gone up 48%, which is what you see on the special education line. We do have more kids in special education than we did from a percentage standpoint, and certainly the costs of those have gone up substantially. Between what was happening 5 years ago and what's happening today, that by itself is $4.5 million more dollars that's coming out of our budget just on those 5 items, and that doesn't even talk about. I haven't even put the appraisal district costs on there. That was a 6-figure increase last year, and we got notice last week of another $150,000 estimated increase that they would like to put in place for next year. And the district administration is having conversations with our appointed board members about our dissatisfaction with that. But the reality is it's a fast-growing entity itself and has a lot of services that it needs to provide, much like our growth. Just as a side note, that $150,000, since it's still being discussed, has not been included in this budget. So the way the appraisal district works is the appraisal district proposes a budget. All of the taxing entities that the appraisal district serve pay that budget based on the percentage of their levy to the total levies collected. So the district pays for 60% of the appraisal district budget. And we pay a percentage of all 3 districts all 3 counties. There's 3 different counties, but certainly Kendall is the largest portion of that. Yeah, it's a little bit tough to compare Kendall to Bear. The amount that we pay for Kamal is 2% of our. I think it's like 20. I don't even think it's $20,000 that we pay to Kamal, but Bear is so much harder to compare to Kendall because it's such a densely populated as opposed to Kendall, much more sparsely populated. So I just wanted to give you a little flavor to why we are where we are, and this is a big part of the reason why. Okay, we do have 2 other funds that we need to adopt. Debt service fund being one of them. The plan is right now to maintain a 32.5%, 5 cent, not percent rate. Philosophically, what the district has done is kept a consistent rate in anticipation of a fast growth district and the need for future bond elections. You keep a consistent rate that allows you to aggressively attack existing debt and maintain capacity, so that when you pass a bond election, you don't have to jerk that tax rate up. And that was done successfully in the 22 bond. And I'll show you a little bit more about that in just a second. The levy is with the preliminary valuation values have come in. We're anticipating about a $36 million levy to address principal and interest in the coming year, and right now am predicting about that we'll get about 1.7 million in state aid. That is coming from the mostly from the homestead exemption increase from 40 to 100,000. The levy loss we saw as a result of that increase is where that state aid is generated. Though I will tell you it's a little bit confusing to try to figure out exactly how that's calculated by the state. The way that I monitor it through the template and try to understand it, and what the TA comes up with are two wildly different animals. And an example would be what's happening in 23-24, where I'm calculating 1.6 million in state aid, and the state has maintained that we're going to get 2.2 million, and I just don't believe them, because according to their own methodology, it just doesn't make any sense. They're going to give us 2.2 million, great, we'll take it and we'll use it to pay down debt and be happy for it. But I don't know how much I believe that 1.7 million, but I believe it to the good and not the bad. It's a conservative number. Just as a reminder, in 24-25, we've sold, with the transaction that we did in May that actually closed yesterday. The money was the 55 million that we sold in May was received in closing yesterday. That is the completion of the $165 million authorization that was successfully approved by the public in May 2002. And so we don't have any new money transactions, nor do we have any upcoming refunding transactions. We've got our 2014s that are callable, and we can use monies to defease those at any point in time. If we'll continue to work with our financial advisor to see if there are monies available. Should we defease 14s, or should we do an advanced refunding on the 2016 bonds? Similar, we did that for the 2014s 2 years ago and saved about $1 million in interest a couple of years ago, and we'll certainly be examining that again. But when I talk about capacity, this is a picture of that capacity. The second column is what we've budgeted for 2025. The big orange one you see at the top is the newest bond issue that we did in May. The sale we did in May we'll pay off of the $37 million that you see budgeted up there. That orange represents a $13 million payment of principal in February 1 of 25. So you can see that line drops off significantly going into 2026, and that's what we talk about capacity, that we have the capacity to issue new debt. What we'll do to fill in those gaps as we go forward is just for folks that haven't sat through this before, is we'll look at refunding opportunities. So in 2026, the 2016 series bonds that you see represented on the bottom of that graph it almost looks purple, but it's a dark it's this dark blue that you see right down here. In 2026 they'll be callable, so I'll go and I'll attack these big bars back here, represent principal at the back end that really need to be paid off. So we'll address the gap that we'll see here, because our levy should be somewhere around 40 million. And we'll pay off a good portion of that and refund the rest of that debt, much like you'd refinance your home. And we'll do the same thing in 2027 for the 2017 bonds. We keep opportunities to refund coming, so we have opportunities every single year. Yes, sir. On the previous years. Well, what we'll know, because it will change, because we'll defease as much of this as we can, but the rest of it will refinance according to whatever market rates are in February of 26. We should see some a significant premium on those. We're also going to restructure this because we have a lot of capacity, and part of that will be pushing the principal that you see here on the 16s and the principal that you in the green that you see on the 17s up here, because this is not the, this is called level debt service, our new debt, and you'll see on the issue that we did last year and the issue that we did this year, they're the same every single year. And except we do them on the front end, and this one's kind of backloaded. We're going to change that structure around to a level debt service and save a ton of interest in doing that. Any questions on the debt service fund? That is still true. That is still true. I think even more so this year. That is all I have on the debt service rate. You'll see the details of that on a week from Monday, but $37 million in revenue, $37 million from principal interest. That just leaves us with the Child Nutrition Fund. By law, we have to adopt a balanced budget. One of the things that we're going to be doing next year is adding a manager for the Viola Wilson campus. We're currently running a surplus. We believe we can do that without any significant budget adjustments. So we're going to maintain the $3.7 million budget that we have at this point in time based on selling 5,850 meals a day like we currently do. Both of those would be conservative numbers. And I believe that is all that I have on the Child Nutrition Fund. Is there any questions or concerns related to child nutrition? All right. When we get together again a week from Monday, we'll have a public hearing on the budget, and this will be presented in a much different form. You'll see the budgets the revenue will be local, state, federal. The expenditures will be broken out by function, where you see them: instructional, school leadership, administration costs, like you do on a monthly basis, and we can adopt a budget and go serve students next year.
Great. Any other thoughts, concerns, questions? You guys feel like you have good direction from us as far as what to present next Monday and everything? And okay, great. Well, it's 2:26. We're about an hour early, and I'd entertain a motion to